So we go now to our next method for calculating the roots of functions. This is the one that is probably the one that's used most commonly, and this is called the Newton-Raphson method. The premise of this function is of this method is quite interesting. So suppose this is your function, and I want to find the root. So this says you start with some starting guess. Let's call this x0. At this point, you draw the tangent to this function. So this tangent comes like this, let's say, and you see where it is hitting the x-axis. So this point we will call it x1. Then at x1 again you see what is the value of the function, and over there again you draw the tangent. So you get a point x2. And so on. So at each step you keep calculating the tangent to the function at that point, and that gives you your next iteration point. And as you can see, by doing this you're going closer and closer to the root. Eventually you should get arbitrarily close to the root. Okay, so what is the formula to do this? You can see here, this is x0 minus x1, and the value of this is f of x0. So the slope of this tangent is given by f of x0 divided by x0 minus x1. But slope of the tangent at this point is just f prime at x0. It is just the derivative of the function at that point. So if I just rearrange this, I get x1 is x0 minus f at x0 divided by f prime at x0. So I can keep redoing, I can do this again. So now if I look at the x1 to x2 triangle, like this one, then once again I can do a similar thing, and I will see that x2 is x1 minus f of x1 divided by f prime of x1. And I can keep doing this iteratively. In general, xn plus 1 is xn minus f of xn divided by f prime of xn. How long should you keep going? As long as it takes for the xn's to not change appreciably. Suppose you want an accuracy of, let's say, up to 4 decimal places. Then you keep doing this process over and over and over again until you find that your xn's are not changing up to the 4th decimal place. They're only changing beyond that. So once you've reached that level of accuracy, then you say, okay, this is good enough for me. So this is the general formula for the Newton-Raphson method. You start with some x0, and then you keep calculating x1, x2, and so on until you reach your desired accuracy. There's one disadvantage over here, which is that you need to know the derivative. You need to know f prime. I mean, if your function is simple enough, it's all right. It's not a big deal. But sometimes you're not given an explicit form of the function. You're just given some points, or you have to calculate the function and its derivative at each point. Then this can get a little computationally expensive. It might take time to do that. But otherwise, it's a very good method for finding the root. It's very fast, and we're going to see that right now. We are going to do an error analysis of the Newton-Raphson method. Okay, so suppose I have a function f which has a root at x star, meaning that f of x star is exactly equal to 0. And after n iterations, suppose xn is my approximate answer. after n iterations. So basically what I'm saying is that x star is xn plus epsilon n. Epsilon n is the error at the nth stage. So xn is epsilon n far away from the actual root. So now if I try to evaluate what is the value of the function at x star, this is the value of the function at xn plus epsilon n. And now I can do a Taylor expansion of this quantity. So this becomes f of xn plus epsilon n times f prime at xn, epsilon n square by 2, f double prime by xn, and so on. But by definition, the value of the function at x star is 0 because x star is the root. So from here, you can see that, okay, and let me also write this epsilon n as x star minus xn. So when you do that, you can write down a formula for x star. Just bring it over onto this side. Basically, you divide throughout by f prime and then rearrange it a little bit. So I will take everything else on that side. I will get xn minus f of xn divided by f prime of xn minus epsilon n square by 2 f prime f double prime xn divided by f prime xn and so on. But now you will notice that xn minus f by f prime is basically our definition of x n plus 1. That is what the Newton-Raphson method tells us. So this is x star, which is equal to xn plus something. So that something over there must be the error, the n plus 1th error, because just as we wrote over here, at the nth step, x star is xn plus epsilon n. So in the same way, even over here, at the n plus 1 step, if this is the approximation, then this must be the error. Okay, so we just compare these two. So epsilon n plus 1 is minus f double prime divided by f prime twice f prime times epsilon n square. And this is the crucial formula. The error at the n plus 1 step is quadratic in the error in the nth step. We are not saying it is quadratic in some small quantity h or something, or 1 over n or anything of that sort. What we are saying is in the nth step, whatever error was there, which was anyway small to begin with, in the next step, your error is as small as being quadratic in that, which means that the Newton-Raphson method is extremely fast in converging to the root, which is why this is a preferred method for most serious calculations. Of course, there are some disadvantages. Like I said, first of all, you need to know what the derivative is. Second thing, it is quite interesting. Suppose here is your function, suppose something like this, and you are trying to come close to this root. So whatever, you started with some x1, then you came to some x2 and so on. At some point, suppose you came to a point x3, which is at an extremum or close to an extremum. Now at this point, f prime becomes 0 or very close to 0. If it is 0, then your system will break down already. Your program will give you some error. If it is close to 0, which means it is quite flat but not exactly, then what will happen is there's a slight tilt, which means your next point will be somewhere very far away. So instead of coming close to the root, you will actually have gone very far away from the root. So that is undesirable. So there may be some special cases where such problems occur, but in general, Newton-Raphson method is a very good way to work. The fourth method that I want to discuss in root finding is called the secant method. Secant method is similar to Newton-Raphson, but with the advantage that now you don't need to know the derivative. So over here you start with some 2 points x1, x2. And you can define the derivative at x2 as being f of x2 minus f of x1 divided by x2 minus x1. This is an approximation to the derivative. Now you do Newton-Raphson. So Newton-Raphson says that x3 is x2 minus f divided by f prime. Instead of f prime x2, you plug this in. So this is the formula for the secant method. I mean, you generalize this to n plus 1, n plus 2, and that gives you the secant method. What is happening over here physically? How is this method working? So let's say you have some function. You want to find the root of this. What you are doing is you start with some x1, x2. You are finding the secant which joins these 2 points, and you are checking where this hits the x-axis. So then you call this x3. Now you connect up f of x2 and f of x3, and you see where this hits the x-axis, call it x4. Then you join x4, f of x4 and f of x3. So then you come here, and so on. So that is how you are getting closer and closer to the root in this case. So this is the secant method. In general, Newton-Raphson is quite strong. In fact, Newton-Raphson has the added advantage that you can also use it for functions of multiple variables. You are not restricted to using it just for functions of single variables. So for example, if you want to look at Newton-Raphson in 2 variables, so you have 2 functions, f1 and f2, and you want to find the value of x and y at which both of these are 0. So suppose the actual root is x star y star, then know that f1 of x star y star, just doing a Taylor expansion the same way that we did before. So this is f1 at x y plus x star minus xn del f by del x plus y star minus yn del f by del y. I should call this xn yn. xn yn, and similarly for f2 also. So 2, this is f1 2 f1 2. So exact same way you can do it for both functions f1 and f2. This allows you to now write this as a that's right. So this allows you to write this as a matrix equation where you have f1 at x star y star and f2 at x star y star is given by f1 at xn yn, f2 at xn yn, plus here you have a matrix now. So del f1 by del x, del f1 by del y, del f2 by del x, del f2 by del y times x star minus xn, y star minus yn. Right. So now by definition, these are 0. And so you have, if I write this as a matrix, so this is f, let's call this the f vector, plus this entire thing is called the Jacobian. You may have come across this before in either in multivariable calculus or differential equations or somewhere. So this Jacobian times this x star, let's call this the delta x vector. So from here you can see that your delta x vector is just minus f, and then I mean normally you would divide by j, but this is a matrix, so I'm going to put a j inverse over here. So once you know the matrix j, and if you know the function at some x and yn, then you can find out what is the function at any other, at the next xn plus 1, yn plus 1. So this is how you can generalize Newton-Raphson method for higher dimensions as well. Okay, the last topic that I want to discuss is actually a fun topic, which is Newton-Raphson method in the complex plane. As you can imagine, this must be similar to Newton-Raphson in 2 dimensions. Because what is a complex number? It is just one real part, one imaginary part. You can think of it as being as two real variables, and you are using Newton-Raphson method in this. So suppose I want to find the roots of this function z cube minus 1. Now what do you know about the roots of z cube minus 1? In the complex plane, so this is the real axis, this is the imaginary axis. This z cube equal to 1 has 3 possible roots. Z can either be plus 1, or it can be, so this is 1, this is e to the power I 2 pi by 3, and this is e to the power I 4 pi by 3. So these are the 3 possible roots of this. These are all 120-degree angles. So these are the possible roots, and what you can do is, if you actually do Newton-Raphson method using complex numbers, you will find that so you have to start with some starting point, right? You need to start with some z0, and then from this you will find z1, z2, zn, and so on, and that will converge to one of these 3 roots. But question is, which starting z0 will converge to which root? Because there are 3 possible roots. So some starting values will converge to one root, some will converge to the other root, some will converge to the third root. So question is, which roots converge where? Now you might think naively, maybe like everything which is in like this region will kind of converge. Like everything over here might converge to this root, everything over here might converge to this root, everything over here might converge to this root, something of that sort. But it's not quite that simple. In fact, the real answer is very, very interesting. You can do it, and if you enjoy programming, I would urge you to actually try it out. So take different z0 values, vary the value, so vary x and y. For each x and y, you get some starting point, no, some z0. With that, you do Newton-Raphson method and you see which of these three roots you're converging to. And then those roots which are converging to one, let's call them red points. Everything that converges to this root, let's call them green points. Everything that converges over here, let's call them blue points. And then you plot. And you get a very interesting pattern when you do that. You get this. This is called Newton's fractal. Basically, all the points which are shaded red, they will converge to whichever root lies over here. All the green points will converge to the root that lies in the green point. All the blue marked points will converge to the one which is in the blue point. And it's very interesting what's happening at the boundaries of these regions. You get fractals. You can go in deeper and deeper and you just get self-replication of the same kind of pattern. So something as complex and as pretty as this comes out of nothing more complicated than just Newton-Raphson method. Okay, so I think with this discussion we come to the end of root finding. We have some time in this lecture, so I'm going to take up one more topic, which is interpolation and extrapolation. So the topic that we are going to cover over here is interpolation and extrapolation. What does it mean to interpolate or extrapolate? Well, basically, suppose you're given the value of the function f at x0, so let's call this y0. Then at x1 you're given similarly x2, and so on. And now you are asked, what do you think the value of this function is going to be somewhere in the middle, somewhere between x2 and y2? Then that is called interpolation. You have to interpolate and find out what is the value of the function over here. Or if I give you something beyond xn or before x1, that is called extrapolation, because that is outside of the given range. So what we are going to do over here is find out how to interpolate and extrapolate. There are lots of different algorithms, very efficient, very complicated. Over here, we're just going to look at one very simple one. So there is, as far as the basic principle goes, there is what is called Lagrange's classical formula. For interpolating. So this formula says that since you have all of these x0 to xn, then the value of f at some intermediate value x is going to be x minus x1, x minus x2 up to x minus xn divided by x0 minus x1, x0 minus x2 up to x0 minus xn plus, first we had skipped out 0 in the numerator, now we'll skip out 1. So x minus x2 divided by x2 minus x0, x2 minus x1, 2 minus xn, so on. At the end, you do with n. So x minus x0, x minus x1, x minus x, n minus 1 divided by xn minus x0, xn minus x1, xn minus x, n minus 1. Oh, I forgot the y's. So here this is y0, y1, yn. So this is the classical Lagrange's formula for doing what is called polynomial interpolation or extrapolation. So then you know all your x0, x1, x2, xn. You also know your y0, y1, y2, yn. So then depending on whatever f you want, you plug it in over here, you'll get your answer. So it's very straightforward to understand it, but not very useful uh, to actually implement it. It's kind of clunky and irritating to write down a program for this. So for that, we use what is called Neville's algorithm. And this uses the forward difference table. Forward difference table means what? So here you have your xi's and your yi's. So let's say x0, x1, x2, x3, x4 and so on. And the important thing to remember over here is that they all have to be equally spaced. So let the common difference between them always be h. And for each of them you have been given some y's. Now what you do is you construct the difference between each two consecutive values. So you construct delta one n as y n plus 1 minus yn. So you take the difference between these two and that gives you delta 1 0. You take the difference between these two and this is delta 1 1. Difference between these two is delta 1 2. Difference between these two is delta 1 3. Okay, having done this, you now define the delta 2 n, which is delta 1 n plus 1 minus delta 1 n. So now you take the difference between these two. So this gives you your delta 2 0, delta 2 1, delta 2 2 and so on. So you can think of this as some kind of derivative, because in the first column over here, this is the difference between the values of y. So how much y is changing in each step. In the second step, now this is the second derivative, because it sees how much your first derivative is changing in each step. And then similarly so on, you can calculate your delta 3n, which is the difference between your delta 2's. So difference between these two, difference between these two and so on. So at every step, you have defined some deltas. Okay, so now suppose you want to find out what is the value of the function at some x. So how do you do that? So if first you write your x as x0 plus some u times h. So you know how much is x0 and you know your h. So you can find out from this how much your u needs to be. Once you know u, then you have to apply this formula. Let me write it from here. F of x is going to be given by f of x1, x0 plus h u f prime of x0. I mean, this just comes from the Taylor expansion. And so on, which you can write it as y0 plus u times delta 1 0 plus u minus 1 by 2 factorial delta 2 0 and so on until the last step turns out to be u minus 1, u minus 2 up till u minus n plus 1 divided by n factorial delta n 0. So this is the formula for doing interpolation using Neville's algorithm. So Actually, something like this, it's also possible to work out by hand. Should we do one quick example? Let's see. So suppose I say, so this is x and this is y. So let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the corresponding values of y are 0, 1, 4, 9, 16. And I want to ask you, what is the value of y when x is equal to, let's say, 2.5? Now, obviously, you can, just by looking at this, you know that this is the square function, but in principle, like, we don't know that. So let's work out the differences. So the first set of differences is 1 minus 0 is 0, 4 minus 1 is 3, 9 minus 4 is 5, 16 minus 9 is 7. Then the delta squares are given by these differences. So 2, 2, 2. And then the delta cubes are 0, 0. So we can stop over here. Once we hit zeros, we can stop. We don't need to go any further. So now let's use that formula which I wrote down on the last page. So if x is 2.5, I want to write x as x0 plus x0 is 0 and h is what? H is 1. In each step, the difference is coming out to be 1. So x plus u. So u is just going to be equal to 2.5. Okay. So let's write it. So f at 2.5, well, f at x y0 plus u delta 0 u minus 1 delta 2 0. We want to go up to delta 3 0. So what do we get? What is y0? Y0 is just 0. U is 2.5 times delta 1 0. So that is delta, this is delta 1 0. So this is just 1. U minus 1. So u minus 1 divided by 2. What is delta square 0? This is 2. And delta 3 0 is 0. So I don't care about that. So this turns out to be 2.5 plus what is 2.5 times 1.5? 15 5 is 75, 15 2s are 30, 37. So this is 5, 2, 6. So there you go. You get the answer 6.25. So 2.5 square is 6.25. So this kind of method you can use for doing interpolation. This is not the only method. In fact, for a lot of professional purposes, people use various other kinds of interpolation like rational interpolation, cubic splines, and so on. There are lots of different algorithms out there. You can take a look at them in the book. They are very well discussed. Even the numerical recipes book discusses this very well. So, okay, this is the end, I think, of the second lecture. I don't have anything more to discuss over here. Yeah, thank you.